Hi, welcome to the St. Bernard Chamber Pulse of the Parish podcast. I am Elizabeth Dautrieve. Joining us today are 2023 St. Bernard presidential candidates Carrie Calais and Louis Pomez. The purpose of this podcast is strictly informational. The St. Bernard Chamber does not endorse or support any political candidate for any position. All four candidates were invited to participate in today's recording, and no scheduling conflicts were indicated. In addition, all candidates did receive the questions prior to this recording. For today's recording, each of the candidates will be given 3 minutes to answer each question. And we ask that you guys not interrupt each other as we go through it. And then at the end, you guys will be given a minute to tell any kind of final recap of what we've talked about or clarification. Whatever you want to use that minute for, you can. And then President McInnis, thank you for joining us today to be our moderator. He will be the one asking all the questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you guys for being here, and for the Chamber for doing everything that you do for our parish all during the year. Dave's right outside of the camera shot here, so you guys do a great job, and today is another one of those things. It's been an honor to serve St. Bernard and work with you guys over the last 7.5 years, and as a council member for 4 years prior to that. So I'm excited to get today started. So we're going to get right into the questions. And our first question, and we're going to start with Councilman Calais, maybe?
Perfect.
Okay. We will begin with, if you are elected, what will be your top 3 priorities once you get into office?
So narrowing it down to 3 is tough, but I mean, one of the biggest issue that is going to be facing the next parish president is going to be the LIT container terminal. Dealing with the container terminal and all that is going to bring on in St. Bernard is going to be one of the biggest responsibilities of the next parish president. It's our job as parish president to represent the will of the people. And, I've said a couple of times now, the only way that it's possible to stop this container terminal is through the lawsuits that have been filed. As y'all have seen, District Attorney Nicosia filed a lawsuit claiming that St. Bernard has sole jurisdiction in our parish. So that would mean that the contract with Port Nola is null and void, and they shouldn't be able to operate that terminal here. So that's the first way that I believe that the container terminal could be stopped. The second would be through the EIS process, which I'm, internally, familiar with, having dealt with it already with the Mid-Breton sediment diversion. I think we've learned a lot going through that process with the diversion. I believe that that diversion will not be constructed in St. Bernard is my personal belief, and I think a lot of that has to do with, the way we've been able to handle that process. So I think it's going to be similar for the port, and I'll make it a top priority to make sure that the will of citizens are represented and the quality of life is not damaged in St. Bernard. My second priority is going to be, I think that we really need to put a focus on cleaning up our streets, making sure that, the main thoroughfares are clean and the grass is cut and maintained, and that we bring back code enforcement to a higher level in St. Bernard. When we first got into office, that was one of the things that, we had a budget that was really a challenge at that time. And that was one of the things that kind of got scaled back to a reactive department. And I think that we've grown enough, we've fixed enough of our major challenges that we can go back to having a proactive department and being able to go out and make sure that everybody's quality of life is really taken to another level in our neighborhoods, and that's got to start with us too in parish government. My third thing is why I got in office to begin with, and that's coastal restoration. There's a lot of things that we have started that I just want to see finished. We've worked so hard to get the MRGO opened. I think we're close there, but that's something that I would like to see through. I'm going to continue to work on closing Mardi Gras Pass for our fishermen and the water quality in St. Bernard, and the Barrier Island restoration projects. I think barrier islands are key to saving our coast, and continuing that project and seeing it through to fruition would be a definite priority in my administration.
Thank you. Mr. Louis Pomez, the same question to you. I can repeat it if you want.
No, that's okay. As the next parish president, if I was elected, Carrie's absolutely correct. I think the biggest fight that we're going to have, as a matter of fact, I know the biggest fight we're going to have is the Port of New Orleans coming into St. Bernard Parish. I've been against it from the day I heard of it. I will continue to fight along with the SOS group. Mr. Sidney Torres' law firm, I've been working very close with them. I've been working very close with Mr. Robbie Showalter, and hopefully that the next council that we get coming in government would work side by side with us to fight against this port coming to St. Bernard Parish. I am not looking for a seat at their table. I'm not looking forward to having their table in St. Bernard Parish. That's one. Number two, I would definitely keep moving forward to restore the fire protection throughout St. Bernard Parish. I think we're doing a great job right now trying to get back that way. It's a matter of time before we restore the fire protection throughout St. Bernard Parish. I would like to upgrade some of the equipment for our firefighters, our fire department. We definitely need some updated equipment in that department. Number three, code enforcement. Code enforcement is great. I think what we need right now is to add some manpower to the code enforcement. I think what we need to add some more manpower to our litter abatement crew. We do have a litter abatement crew. They can start on a Monday morning and stop on Friday. The next Monday morning, they can go start over right where they started the week before that. We definitely need to increase our litter abatement crew.
All right. Thank you, Louis. Well, I was going to follow up with the question. We talked about the fire department, we talked about the code enforcement, and that those items were always an issue. But this next question, if you don't mind, I'll just go into the next question, because the next question is, tell us about one department within parish government that you would like to reevaluate and why. The strengths, the weaknesses, and the funding, which is most important to get some of these departments back up to where they were or to where you want them to go. So, Mr. Pomez, you go first on this one.
Well, first of all, I don't think that we have any department throughout our government that is failing. I think we have a couple of departments in government that we may need to do a little boost and help out with maybe some more manpower. I would like to have the opportunity to bring in 2 experienced grant writers to see to it that St. Bernard Parish can continue to get our fair share of state and federal grants. That's one. I think I mentioned before, code enforcement. We need more manpower in code enforcement. Our road department would be the next department. I would like to put together a blacktop crew and our concrete crew. I like to have bricklayers. We have thousands of catch basins throughout St. Bernard Parish, and every catch basin in this parish is made out of bricks. When they're destroyed by heavy equipment, large trucks, we have to go out there and re-brick them catch basins, put them back together. The manholes that are in the middle of the street, majority of our manholes are not precast, they're made out of brick. I would like to get a crew together to see to it that we can do a lot of in-house repairs to our roadways, sidewalks, and streets. Thank you.
Ms. Calais.
So I agree with most of what he just said. I think the most important thing that we can do is, and we have we have a grant person right now, right? I think that fleshing out that whole grant department would be absolutely necessary to continue and to grow St. Bernard, right? We've asked our citizens to put up enough money, right? I don't think we should go after any more money for our citizens, so we have to bring it in from somewhere else. We have to bring it in from Baton Rouge or from D.C. And the way to go after that money is to have a full-fledged grant department that can take advantage of all of the opportunities. The federal system is flush with infrastructure money right now, and we need it in St. Bernard. So I think if we had in-staff, in-house grant department team, then we could get our fair share and maybe more of our fair share of that infrastructure funds that St. Bernard so desperately needs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, and both of you know that we're still looking for a grant writer. It's so difficult to find. We have a lot of help for state and federal, and we work on Mardi Gras Pass, we work on coastal restoration. Drainage was something, Louis, you was involved with when we went to D.C., and Kerry as far as providing the funding for that, and we lost that in Washington, D.C. So, these things we just keep on fighting. And what I think people don't realize, and why don't y'all talk about this for a little bit before I go to the last question. Our budget is, let's say our budget's $1, right? We spend about $100 a year. I mean, if our budget's $30 million, we're spending $100 million a year because of, and I'll tie it in, because of the relationships that we have built over the last 7 years at the federal level and the state level. So what will you guys do to continue that? We already know that the grant writing is so important, and we're going to spend some money on that. But what else would you do to make sure that those relationships are still intact going forward? We are at Ms. Calais, is that her turn?
So that's one of the main reasons that I decided to run for this office. I think that I'm in a unique position, having made regionalism in my life a priority over the last decade. I've been in D.C. every year fighting for St. Bernard for the last 10 years. So I've made relationships with, most of the regional leaders in our area, having, gone on these trips with them before, going to the different meetings across the country that, are focused on showing you how to go after these infrastructure funds. I've been lucky enough to be able to call most of the parish presidents or councilmen or senators in our region friends. I can text them when I need something or when I have a problem. And St. Bernard being a small parish, that is absolutely critical for us, because when we go for an FIP in D.C. or when we go for coastal restoration dollars, D.C. might not listen to little St. Bernard, right? But when we go as a region, we go as a team, as a group, with the MRGO funding projects, with the Go Mesa or Nail the Shores Act, when we put together coalitions, we can fight things like, the FEMA flood ratings or, fight for our fair share of oil revenues. And it's only when we have that relationship and that coalition that we can make a difference and actually move that needle when we go to Washington, D.C. I think it's going to be an absolute critical part of this next administration.
Thank you. Mr. Pobes?
Well, Guy, you mentioned that when you and I went out to Washington and we was fighting for that drainage money, I might not be 100% correct on the numbers, but I think it was somewhere around $203 million that we was asking for, that we was actually owed St. Bernard Parish, and we didn't receive that funding. That money was critical to St. Bernard Parish. Right after that, we inherited 8 major pump stations throughout this parish, another 60 miles of drainage canals. The pump stations needed some serious upgrading. Since we inherited them, we put 4 brand new Caterpillar engines in them pump stations. They was about $500,000 a piece. We had the gearboxes that had to be reworked that turns them pumps. They was about $400,000 a piece on 4 of those. We had to pull some of the pumps that actually pump the water. That ran us about $300,000 to pull and repair those pumps. St. Bernard only received $7 million to take over the 60 miles of drainage canals and 8 major drainage pump stations. Not to mention, St. Bernard Parish already owned and operates 22 drainage pump stations throughout our parish. Some of them are electrical, some of them are diesel over hydraulic. These pump stations was all up and running, rebuilt after Katrina. Well, today, they're 18 years old. They about hit their lifespan, So drainage money is very important for St. Bernard Parish.
Yeah, so, we only have 2 candidates here today, so we might as well talk a little bit. I think, and we can edit that out if you want, right? But, the recurring theme that I see, and there are other campaigns going on, the council races and stuff, is code enforcement, right? And I get it. I know the surefire way to fail at it is to try to please everybody, right? And both of you know, when we came into office during this administration, we were like 2,300 outstanding claims that were just sitting there, right? And we cut that budget by about $600,000 to get it down to where we're at. And we immediately, within months, got that to zero. So now we are a reactive code enforcement. If we get a complaint, we go out and we handle it. Those complaints don't sit open for very long in parish government. So that's a good thing. Talk a little bit about where in your vision of code enforcement, how, because it's going to take a lot of funding if we're going to be proactive. So if you're proactive, you got to be proactive in Araby, Delacroix, and I'm making a point that it's parish-wide. If you have a problem with abandoned cars, if you will, then you better make sure you're taking care of abandoned cars in Delacroix as much as you are in Araby. So it becomes intense work if you're going to be proactive. And other communities around have it. They have the funding. So the discussion I think we need to have, and what somebody's going to have in the next administration starting out, is where are you going to look originally for that funding? Fines, you can work with the next council. You can take it from another area, or so forth. So what's going through your mind as setting that up as far as funding? My assumption is we're going to have to hire at least as many people that's in that department today. So you're looking at least doubling it, So let's have that discussion. Whoever, I'm sorry, I done lost track. Who's next? Louis is next, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I'll take that question. Well, first of all, you said you try to please everyone with code enforcement. Well, if you have somebody that comes in and he has that car sitting in his front yard on cement blocks, concrete blocks, that guy is in violation, okay? And you're going to try to please him, you're going to make everybody else on that street angry at you. Have code enforcement do the job. They're probably not going to be able to pay the fines on what it's going to cost for us to have that vehicle towed or clean that yard up. But if they don't pay that fine, you put it on a property tax. End of the year, when they get their property tax, well, they have a bill from St. Bernard Parish government. I had 4 men there, a pickup truck, weed eaters, and lawnmowers. You're paying for that, okay? Not the taxpayers. You're going to pay for it on your property tax bill. That's one way of bringing some of that revenue in. And I think we kind of do that a little bit
we
right
do that
now.
now.
I think we do that now. So, I mean, that we probably don't get paid for half of it. But once that bill gets above the value of that piece of property, well, let's sell that piece of property on the courthouse steps. I don't see any reason to why someone should have a $500,000 home on the street and their next door neighbors has got a boat blocking the sidewalk, a car sitting up on cinder blocks, the grass 3 feet high in the front yard and the backyard. There's no reason for that in a residential neighborhood. When it comes down to the funding for the department, it's a good question on where that fund's going to come from. But I think it's going to be very wise for St. Bernard Parish to get together and build that code enforcement up to where it needs to be at. The men and women we have working in code enforcement today, they work very hard. They work 7 hours a day. They put in a day's work, and just about everybody they have to approach, they make them angry because there's something wrong with their property. As code enforcement, one of the biggest problems that I'm looking at is what I call an encroachment on our right-of-ways. If Energy has a right-of-way, somebody will run their fence all the way through Energy's right-of-way. When we get a little tornado or a hurricane and we got light poles down in their backyard, there's no way to get to them because they encroached on our right-of-way and blocked our right-of-ways. When the tractors and the manpower were trying to maintain the canals, and people extend their fence out past their property, it's an encroachment on our right-of-way. Some of them build swimming pools on the right-of-ways, and it prevents us from getting back there to do the proper maintenance on our right-of-ways. I'm done here. That's caught up.
I'm glad that you finally got buzzed. No, I agree. I think that how I would see it happening is a staged approach, right? I think the first thing we have to do is concentrate on our major thoroughfares. I think that we're going to have to go into our major thoroughfares, work with the businesses and the industry. I mean, one of the biggest things I think we can do is work with, the big industry that is here and get them to help us, get the commercial properties to help us, and clean up, those major thoroughfares that people see when they drive into our parish. I think the more that people see a clean and, well manicured and taken care of parish, the more that they take pride in their property and the more that they will want to, to follow suit. So I think, you're not just going to turn on day one and be able to fund a full code enforcement. There's a reason why we had to cut it back to begin with, and we certainly don't want to go back there. But I think you could, find some extra in each department. You don't want to cut any department out and stage it back. Start with those main thoroughfares and then tackle the bigger issues. You mentioned cars, wrecked cars or abandoned cars. But, start with each thing so you can be the same throughout the parish. You can make sure that you're not, hitting one area and not doing the same thing in the other. So I think if you just take a staged approach and, pick your issues, pick the worst issues that you see across the parish and add them in one by one, and, there will be fines, right? There will be consequences to having these things. So you'll start recuperating some of that funding as you go along. But, I think you're just going to have to, skim some off of the top of each department to be able to start it initially.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting to kind of see that new breath of fresh air into that department, because it's the department that is going to come at you every day, and y'all know that already. Y'all get it. Y'all get it every day. The fire department, it's something that we're all proud of. We have one of the best fire departments in the state, the most well-trained fire department in the state. But it's always controversial when you talk about fire departments. You talk about any community, anywhere, when you have a unionized fire department that is as passionate as those guys are, it becomes controversial. So are there any specifics that you guys might want to talk about in correcting that funding? And look, the fire department is a funding problem, right? When we came into office as council members, and neither you two were there. Louis, you might have been there in the beginning of the Peralta administration. But we had a $12 million problem. It was estimated at $14 million, and it wound up being a $12 million problem. We took care of it with $6 million for the fire department, passed the tax, took them out of the general fund, out of the political conversation. Hey, here's your money, here's your tax, we're not going to have to deal with you anymore. We come in and we fixed the other $4 or $5 million at that time when we came into office. So here we are, right? Expenses are only going up. The taxes have stayed the same for the last 12 years or so. So obviously something's always got to give, right? And we want to we want a fire station on every corner. We want a fire truck to respond to every medical incident, right? And we do. Our fire department does that, and that's what makes us so great. So if you could pinpoint, no matter what we try to do to try to increase coverage for the parish, whether we were increasing on something that we already have all the fire stations, for instance, where are you going to find that funding to cover that, whatever that decision might be, to make it better or to bring back the full coverage, if you will, for the fire department? Where are you going to find that funding from to cover that? And are we on Louis?
On Kerry.
Kerry, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Miss Calais.
So I think
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. I think that I'm really interested to see what the current study that we're doing comes back to say. And I've heard already that, we don't need to study it. We just need to fund it and move on. But because we've always done something a certain way doesn't mean that we should continue to do it a certain way. When we came back after Katrina, we just opened everything just like we had it in the same manner that we had it. And from what I'm hearing from, the fire chiefs and experts across the nation that are looking at this and our current, fire administration, there's a lot of things, and I'm not just talking about stations, but the setup of our department that may not be the correct setup for what we have. There may be places where we're spending too much money, or places that we shouldn't. We should have a different structure than what we have now. And I'm interested to see, and I'm sure that not all of the suggestions from the study will work for us, but I'm interested to see from those experts, what they think of our department setup and what that should look like in a perfect world, right? And then hearing back from the community and saying, like, okay, these are some of the thoughts that they came with. What do y'all think? What will work for our community, and what are some changes that we can make that will make it more efficient of a fire department? Because I think if you make it more efficient, then you can afford that protection that maybe you're missing right now. Down the road's an interesting area for fire protection because it's so spread out, right? And it's a challenge to make sure that those areas get the protection that they deserve because of the vast amount of miles that we have to cover. But it's crucial that we make sure that they're getting the protection that they do deserve and pay for. So I'm interested to see what that looks like, and I think that there's some changes we can make, structurally to make sure that we can afford protection across our whole parish.
Thank you. Mr. Pomez.
Well, Guy, you mentioned about 12 years ago when we passed this millage for the fire department. The fire department was part of our general fund, and then we removed that part out of general fund and we let them survive on the millage and the millage only. In the past 12 years, I would imagine that the cost of the fire department has probably went up probably 20-25% on an increase, we give out yearly raises. There's the insurance rates and a lot of other things that comes along with that cost to run fire department. I don't know if we're going to have the monies that we took away from them out of general funds to give back. I think it was a couple $1 million. If we can find that to give them, that's a start to get us back together in the eastern end of the parish, down in Hopedale and Delacroix. I think most of the roles that they roll on injuries, it's in commercial. And the commercial business that we have in the eastern end of the parish, everybody down there is a commercial fisherman. These guys work on winches with cables, and they're running boats out in the middle of the water. There's pylons out there with no lights on them. There's so many things that can happen in the eastern end of that parish that, it's commercial. I think we need to find the funding to make sure that we can have that station open in Delacroix and have that station open in Wacklowski, and safe housing for our firefighters to stay in.
Thank you. We're going to do one more. You could always edit this stuff out because
He's going rogue on me. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean,
it's interesting.
Look,
if you guys are comfortable, I'm comfortable.
Worked with you two for 7.5 years, and I'm just proud of us, right? For what we've done, and these conversations happen every day, right, between us. So, I'm looking at both of you guys, and over the last 7.5 years, we have dealt with more disasters than anyone should ever. Hurricanes, tornadoes, COVID. I mean, look, 2.5 years or whatever of COVID, it was something. And for these disasters, Louis, you're going to have to be a little less hands-on, and Carrie, if you're elected, and Carrie, you're going to have to be a little bit more hands-on from being a council member. So what does that look like in your world as you look to be elected during these disasters? What have you learned? How hands-on will you be? How hands-off are you going to be able to be? Because that's going to be difficult. And let's just discuss that a little bit, and we'll wrap it up with this.
I don't think I'm going to be working a dump truck, if that's what you're asking. Sorry. No, I mean, we've actually discussed this recently, and I think one of the biggest things that we've been able to do over the last 8 years that has made a difference in these disaster situations is having our contingency fund. Having that fund and maintaining it is going to be critical, because we are often the victim of natural disasters because of, the wonderful place that we get to live. One of the consequences of that is that, we're going to deal with hurricanes, and we never knew we were going to deal with tornadoes, but apparently that's been, a thing recently that I hope is over. But I think being able to hit the ground immediately, to be able to get to the citizens, to be able to do the things that we need to do to get life back to normal as possible, the Contingency Fund makes that happen. And then to be able to go out and make sure that we recoup those monies from FEMA or the state or wherever it may be. And I think that's where my strong suit is, to make sure that we deploy those people immediately. We have a great road crew. We have a great team that's able to get out there and work with the sheriff's department and immediately get as close to back to normal as we can as quickly as possible. But then to be able to go recoup that money and make sure that that contingency fund is maintained is going to be critical.
Well, guy had 40 years of experience on learning what to do, when to do it, and how to do it when a disaster comes. Tornadoes, we don't get a warning from. We have to be ready. When there's bad weather coming, it's always been part of my responsibilities to make sure I have the proper equipment and the right manpower in the right areas. When the hurricanes come, it's a total different story. We have time to prepare for it. We prepare for hurricanes all year long. We don't wait till hurricane season to get prepared for that. We prepare for that all year long. The men and women that work in my department, and some of them been working with me for more than 30 years, I think I have them the way they pretty much know what to do, when to do it, and how to get it done. We have some of our guys that's been doing it for quite a few years that are leaving. They're retiring. After 36 years, it's a long time working in government, and it's time for them to go enjoy life. With the finances we have available to replace them guys, it's not going to happen. We ran the last couple of years on a skeleton crew because of COVID, lack of manpower. We did a really well job at it. There's so many different needs when the hurricane season hits us in every part of St. Bernard Parish. Outside that flood protection levee, outside that flood wall, it's a matter of time to get on board. With above normal high tide, we have to get on that right away. We have to make sure there's a rock dam. We have to put on Florissant Highway. You have to make sure that material goes down dry. You can't wait till it gets wet. You can't wait for a rain shower. You can't wait for the water to be on the roadway. You have to know when to put it. You have to watch the tides, day in and day out. We work very close with the Homeland Security. We have a really good team in Homeland Security. We work very close with the Southeast Flood Authority. Today they have a new president for the Southeast Flood Authority. I've been touching bases with him on a regular basis, Mr. Clay Kosey. We also work very close with the Sheriff Department. Our Sheriff Department is very good at joining in and helping us prepare for a tropical storm coming in or a hurricane. And as far as me keeping my hands off, that's not going to happen. I can tell you all that. Okay? I will be out there with the men and women, maybe supervising, or maybe on a piece of equipment, but I will be out there performing my job duties.
I don't think either one of y'all would say anything different. So good luck to you guys. It's just begun, right? And I know both of you are going to do well in reaching out to the public and getting your message out. Elizabeth, thank you, and good luck to you, right? And if the other two candidates want to come and do this, I'm willing to come back. You can let them know. And I just think these discussions are something that we need to have going into this next administration because it's going to be critical in our parish's growth. Thank Councilman Calais and Mr. Pomez for putting your names out there and willing to do what you do.
Thank you guys so much for being here today with us. I do appreciate you taking the time. And President McInnis, thank you for being here to moderate and asking all the hard questions of them. And I really do appreciate you guys giving us the time to answer these questions because like President McInnis said, this is a very important election. And it's important for our community to hear from you guys, to know where you stand and what your intentions are while you run, when when you get into office, sorry. I do want to make sure that the community also knows that we'll be hosting our political forums on August 30th and 31st. With as many people running for office, we had to split it into 2 days. So that'll take place at the council chambers. You can find more information about that on our website or by downloading our app. Or you can download St. Bernard Chambers app on any Android or Apple device, and you will actually be able to live stream it from that app as well. So they'll be able to watch that from wherever they are. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for joining us.